Joining me on this episode of the Neil Wilkins Podcast, I'm delighted to welcome Robin Waite. Now, Robin is the founder of Fearless Business. He's a regular speaker at a whole host of business events. He's a best-selling author of several books, not just one, including Online Business Starter, Marketing Machine, and also the highly popular recent release, Take Your Shot. He has at least a couple of decades of experience in business to work with clients, coaching them, mentoring them, and helping them to reach their goals by way of creating more time and increasing revenue. So who better to talk to us about how to become a business consultant? Robin, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Neil. Very excited to have our discussion today because, it's a lot of experience around consulting and things like that, which I hopefully we can share today with your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many things to touch on with this kind of topic. It's so broad, isn't it? Because I think for some people, they say, oh, I want to become a consultant. I want to do the side hustle properly. I want to break out from being employed and kind of go it alone. I've got all this kind of knowledge and passion to do something, but where to start? I mean, where would you start? If you were kind of going back to kind of day one, as it were, making that kind of call and that judgment to go for this, what would you have done?
What I did do was make lots of mistakes, Neil. I think that's how everybody learns. But I think with hindsight, knowing what I know now and sort of with the types of clients which I get to work with, one of the first things would be just to resolve the pricing issue. I think a lot of people, when they especially leave sort of a time for money based job, they then replicate that in their consulting business when they're first starting out, and ultimately end up charging either hourly rates or day rates for the work which they do. And one of the most common things, which are conversations which I have with clients, is that consultants are usually incredibly smart people. They get amazing results for the clients they work with, typically because they've already got lots of experience in an employed role. They absolutely love the work which they do, but then they're sort of, but they charge day rates. And then at the end of the month, they're like, well, I've done all this effort. Like, where's the money that I should, be paid for this? And ultimately what it comes down to is when you charge time for money, effectively, time is a finite resource. It's a scarce resource. And the average consultant, when they set their prices, their day rate, they sort of imagine themselves delivering 20 days worth of, paid work each and every month. But the reality is, when you're first starting out in not just consulting, but any business, you've got to do marketing, you've got to do sales, you've got to do networking, you've got to do your accounts and finance. You've got to, then your kids get ill and, or you've got a play which you've got to go to or something like that, or you get ill. And then all of a sudden your days just get eked away. They get chipped away at as you go throughout each and every month. And on average, the typical consultant will probably only do about 2, maybe 3 billable days worth of work each and every week. And all of a sudden, that just massively reduces your earnings potential because you've got limited time to be able to deliver the work. So the simple solution for this is, it's a concept which has been around for quite a long period of time, is productizing your service. So rather than selling your time and that finite resource, it's much more important if you focus on that remarkable sort of result or outcome which you deliver for your client, and then price based on that value, as opposed to, it's the result of the thing which you do rather than the actual thing which you do, which you're pricing on.
I love the fact that you've started at that point, because I think most people will be saying, yes, you've got to find your ideal client. You've got to figure out what your proposition is. You've got to start using AI and blah, blah, blah. This is real nuts and bolts practicality, isn't it, Robin? Because, I think that whole idea of not being limited, and I guess this applies to people who are employed as well, not being limited by that finite resource, as you describe it, of time. Because if it is finite, then there's always this boundary within which you're working. And that's really quite constricting, isn't it? Because you could, in theory, have 1,000 customers in a day. Whereas actually, if you're doing it by just purely time alone, you can probably get, 5 or 6 actually done with some sort of quality conversations or planning. This is so much more flexible and scalable, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we're all told when we're starting a business to write a business plan, and quite frankly, that I'm going to say something a bit controversial. They're a waste of time, because you can do like a 40-page business plan and put as many pretty graphs in there as you want, and cash flow forecasts and various things like that. But it is very much like a finger in the air. There is this concept which I've sort of created, which is it's not so much even as a business plan on a page. Like this business plan, which I'll share with you now, is pretty much, you could write it on the back of a postage stamp, and it's around this concept of something called goal focused pricing. So you'll see there is a theme here. It's all about understanding and knowing your numbers, and setting your business up for, ultimately setting your business up for success through in a way that's sustainable and profitable. So how goal focused pricing works, and again, consultants think, oh, I'll just go and sell some consulting and then they'll kind of like wing it and make it up after that. That's not a business plan for success. Goal focused pricing works by, first of all, just figuring out, what if I could have the perfect year, what would my financial goal be, from that? And so I'm going to make the numbers super simple, mostly for myself more than anything else, Neil, but hopefully for those listening as well. Let's say, for example, you wanted to do £100,000 in your first year of consulting. That's a very standard sort of goal for a lot of people, hitting those 10K months and 100K, bust through that threshold. The next question I'd ask is, right, well, if you were going to sell your consulting and you had to sell it as a package, how much would you sell it for? And so we might come to a conclusion that, they might sell on average 2 days worth of consulting at £500 a day. So the average package is £1,000. Okay. All we do then is we take the big number and divide it by the little number. So 100K divided by 1,000. Great. Well, that means you've got to deliver 100 units of your consulting this year. And immediately their eyes pop out of their head, because they're like, wow, 100, it's either 100 clients or 100 sets of 2 days. Well, that's the entire year taken up just to get to 100K, not forgiving any of the other things which I said, talked about earlier on. So at that point we go, okay, well, now we've got to make a slight adjustment, and we can talk about niching and outcomes and results later, but let's figure out what is a good fee to get paid that doesn't compromise your ability to be able to deliver. So, and it's basic supply and demand economics. That's all we're working through at the moment. So, and they might say something like, okay, well, maybe 20 products or services, 20 consulting packages. I think that's what I've got enough capacity to be able to deliver that this year. So now what we do is we take the 100, we divide it by 20, and we're left with £5,000. So what they've got now is an idea for a £5,000 product. And we've got to figure out how we can stack enough value into that 5K to make it attractive, in terms of the result or outcome, the return on investment, make it attractive to 20 potential clients. And that's the basic framework. That's your business plan on a page. We might then shift gears and then start to look at demand. So how do we stimulate enough demand in order to attract 20 clients into our consulting practice? And again, people's eyes pop out of their head, especially from starting from scratch, because they anticipated getting their first client. They didn't see what into the future, what it looked like, in terms of effort to be able to get 20 clients on board, for example. So just with 4 or 5 very simple questions, we've started to look at a consulting practice in a completely different way to how we would have done to start off with.
I love this, because that limiter, that kind of, just sort of looking at a number and then doing that sort of subdividing, that it puts a certain level of practicality. But if you turn it around through almost 180 degrees, you can almost look outwards and say, look, if I'm not boundarying, if there is such a word there, putting a boundary in with my time here, I'm not then limited by those units. I mean, that was a word that really stood out to me when you were describing that, was this kind of units of time. Because if I'm looking at the value that I'm bringing to, let's not just say an individual client, but maybe the world through, a podcast or through a webinar series or a course, which is obviously what we all see, plastered all over social media and YouTube and stuff, is like, come on, do this course, do that course and stuff. But of course, that's the scalable element of this, isn't it? Is that once you have this pocket of value, be it a certain product or a certain service that you're offering, or maybe it's a business model that is just, really, really kind of exciting to a particular market sector, you can start to push that out at scale if you're not limiting by those units of time. And it's almost then there's no boundary, is there? So that ceiling that you've described there in that example of 100,000, almost you blow that ceiling out the water. So there's an opportunity to really take some control over this, isn't there, rather than being dominated by that ceiling number.
Yeah, that's it. And the idea is that it is productized. Products have a specific set of features. They have systems and processes that enable those products to be either manufactured or delivered. And I think a lot of service client businesses, like consultants, really, and marketeers, for example, they need to really think of themselves as selling products. They're like building that production line in order to be able to deliver that same product or service over and over again in a predictable way. And if they do that for similar sorts of clients as well, I don't know if we've got time to sort of talk about niching and ideal clients today, but if they do the same thing over and over for similar clients, they're going to get very predictable outcomes and results for those clients. People will start to perceive that consultant as being an expert in their niche, an authority figure that they know they can get great results. And I think this is where the first sort of challenges start to creep in for a lot of consultants mindset wise, because where you start to talk about promising a dream outcome or result to a client, immediately they recoil. They're like, oh, well, I couldn't possibly do that because it depends on the client and it depends on the circumstance, it depends on the timing, it depends on how many hours I've got. But it depends is actually a swear word at Fearless HQ. It's banned because it depends is actually code for we do too many things for too many different types of people. We've got too many variables in our business because we're trying to make friends with everybody rather than just doing one thing really, really well. So the job of a consultant is actually to remove as many variables as they possibly can do. And just to give an example, actually, of like the productizing sort of piece as well, because hopefully this will make sense. There's kind of three steps to it. So the first one is figure out what are you amazing at? What is your hero product that you could sell to somebody? What's the dream outcome result you're delivering for that client? So that's thing number one. The second thing is, can it be delivered within a fixed period of time? And then the third thing is, can it be delivered for a fixed fee? So I was doing a good friend of mine, actually, it was a pastor at my local church. And that's not how we met, by the way. I'm not particularly religious, not that's really got anything to do with this, but he's a pastor at my local church, but he worked for UNICEF as a digital marketer. So his job was essentially running Facebook ads for UNICEF Indonesia they give him a budget and then his remit was a 5x ROI. Now, what might surprise you is his budget, one guy, was to spend $10 million a year on Facebook ads just for UNICEF Indonesia. And he had this system which worked, but he was fed up with it because being a pastor at a local church, his thing was about impact. And he didn't just want UNICEF to benefit from this. He felt every charity could benefit from this, or non-profit. So we had a conversation and he said, right, I'm going to start a consultancy. So we pulled him out of sort of selling his time for money within UNICEF. And he created this, he worked out a system where he could train somebody in what he knew about Facebook ads if they were a marketer working within a charity, within 8 weeks, he could get them to a point where they could run their own digital ad campaign. And his first client ended up being, it was I think it was Greenpeace South America or something like that. And they put 10 of their marketing department onto his course at $3,600 a head, because they figured, well, if we can just get 1 out of the 10 working, we made our money back. But if the more people we can get, with this kind of ROI, so that was $36K, for an 8-week program, which he probably spent an hour on a Zoom call as a group, and then for the individual organization or department, another hour. So 2 hours a week for 8 weeks. And you work out the effective hourly rate on that, and it's a lot, And then it escalated from there. I think he ended up doing something like $600,000 within the first 9 months of setting up that training company, doing the knowledge transfer. And one day there was another big charity here in the UK. I won't say who it is because it's not public necessarily, but they wanted him to Nick to do this change program within their organization. So completely change how they were doing digital fundraising. And it was probably a 3 or 4 week project, but Nick, he was doing so well with the course that teaching people, he didn't really want to be stuck in with one client for 3 weeks because it went against his values. And he said to me, well, how much, like, they're desperate to have me work for them. Like, what do I charge for this? And I was like, well, what would be life-changing for you? What would make a difference to you? And I'm going to caveat this because this isn't about just, profiteering or, making it all about the consultant making as much money as they possibly can do. This is about making sure that it's it's a win-win for both. But I said to him, what would you like to get out of this? He said, well, my dream has always been to be mortgage free. And I said, okay, well, how much is that? And he said, 175K. And I jokingly said, well, there's your price then. Unbeknownst to me, he then went away and quoted this, and they said yes to it. Paid in full up front for a 3-week change program, and away he went. And I've had another similar with a client who does leadership training and development. We'd worked together for several months, and we were getting to a point where his he was set with his packages, training packages, which he did for his clients, and he was escalating his pricing gradually. And then he came to me and he said, I've got a dilemma. He said, I just don't know how to charge for this client. We did a quick sort of 10-minute turbo call. And again, I said to them, well, look, if you were going to quote for this like on a consulting basis, like a monthly basis, what would you do? And he said, well, probably for the resources I'd have to put into it, this would be like me full time, I don't know, 30K a month. I said, okay, well, let's put a little bit on top. Imagine you've got to have consultants and there's other resources which you'll need, to put into it, travel and things like that. So how about 150K and we'll call it a 90-day transformation program with this company. And he's like, love it. They'll love that. It's perfect. It's exactly what they need. So obviously there were more details than that, but the way he went and he pitched it, and actually I think they ended up agreeing on 110K for 90 days. So still significant sum of money, and far more. When we first started working together, I think he was charging £400 a day or something like that for training. And out of that 110K, I think 10K of that he set aside to pay consultants to come in and help assist with the fulfillment, the delivery. But again, you can see that there's no, if he was just selling, I mean, for most people, that's like a year's worth of revenue, it just within that. And also because he's charging more money, he's actually able to bring in other experts to help, which is helping to enable other jobs, other businesses to thrive as well, and various things like that. And also one of the things which he said to me, he said, previously I never would have done it that way, but he said, what it's allowed us to do at 110K is get really creative and stack more value into the package, which obviously is going to add to the value and get them better results on sort of the back end of it. So actually, his concepts like productizing services and packaging based on the outcomes is so incredibly powerful. But a lot of people don't really generally, you probably find this, don't have the confidence to sort of, promise results or guarantees or things like that.
I think it's just so interesting hearing these stories, and thank you for, speaking so openly about this as far as you can, because I think it kind of really brings this stuff to life, because there is a lot of hot air in our industry. I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of people promising a huge amount of stuff, and you either do the maths or you look at the detail and you think there's just no way. But obviously these are real stories. Where would somebody, if they're kind of listening to this, Robin, sort of thinking, that sounds great, I'd love a piece of this, I do have some stuff that I could productize, I could create some really, really, really exciting stuff here, but I have a little bit of imposter syndrome. I've got this feeling of maybe I'm not confident enough to kind of do this or actually put those kinds of numbers into a proposal, because I think, the client would just think I'm having a laugh here. How does somebody kind of get over that? I mean, obviously you use the word fearless a lot. It is a real mantra here, and I hope you've already said it. I can see it on the screen here. It is very much part and parcel of you. But if somebody isn't feeling fearless, how do they kind of get over those barriers?
Yeah, well, the concept of fearless, where it came from actually was I was delivering a talk in front of about 150 people, and somebody asked me a question. I made a statement which was, business owners need to fear the things in business ever so slightly less that stop them from achieving their goals. So, and my best friend, like Adam, stood up because he was listening in the audience. He pointed at me and he went, "Robin, Waite, the fearless business coach," and it stuck then. But it is a mantra. It's a lot of business owners get very hung up about asking for what they want for a start. So they might have this dream of doing 100K business, but they don't ask for the things which they need in order to get to that 100K, earnings potential, or more even beyond that. They're too afraid to stand up and do a 60-second pitch, or if there's a potential partner that could make an introduction into a business where they would love to do some marketing or consulting work within, actually, hey, could you make that, like asking for it. So the concept is just like remembering in business that there's only two things really that can ever go wrong in business, especially in Western civilization as well. You can look a bit stupid, or you can lose a bit of money. Right? And if those are the worst outcomes, there's not really much downside to just putting yourself out there, basically. But a major part about asking for your worth, like getting paid what you're worth, is just down to our mindset. It's the beliefs and internal sort of money, our internal value system, and the money story that we've inherited, quite frankly, mostly from our parents, that determines our ability to be able to ask for what we want. So for me personally, and I know that many people this will resonate with, growing up, didn't have many holidays. In fact, there was only one which I can remember, and I never went abroad because my parents didn't have the money to do that. So I think we went when I was 14 on a 2 or 3 day trip down to Bournemouth, for a couple of days, me and my brother, and that was about it as far as our family holidays went. But very much in our household, it was money doesn't grow on trees. Money is the root of all evil. You can't afford those trainers, Robin, because we don't have the money for it. And I started going out at sort of 14, 15, doing paper rounds and going and working in our local pub, waiting on tables and stuff, so I could start to have my own money. But as an example, but that money story we develop as children, sometimes even before our memories are formed. And as we grow up, we then look for evidence and we reinforce it in our parents trying to be helpful and also reinforce it. And then we're thrown out into the world at 18, 20, think, right, I'm going to start earning my own money and running a business maybe. And like that child's story doesn't help us as adults. And we have very reserved feelings and values around money, and most of it is about keeping it safe. We can't be fearless with it. We can't take risks with it. But how we start to unprogram that, and I'm going to try, and you're going to have to play with me here, Neil. We're going to do a little bit of a role play. You probably weren't expecting this, but it's the best.
It's all good. Absolutely.
So imagine if you have a real life example now of a product that you would love to launch. Is there something which you've got in mind?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us a little. Tell me a little bit about it.
So it's an amalgamation of a whole host of assets that I've been creating over the last 18 months to do with AI in marketing. So how AI will impact marketing in all its various facets. So I've amalgamated all of these assets together into an online course, very video based, and it's now available.
Okay, great. And how much are you charging for it, if you don't mind me asking?
So £49 UK. So it's about, I don't know, what's that, $52, $53, something like that.
Okay, so for one, that's way too cheap. But two, imagine if we had to bundle Neil in with that course as well. So it's a blended learning. So there's a bit of live training with you as well as that course. How would you go about sort of charging for that, do you think?
So in my mind, there would then be almost like I'm going to hesitate to use, but I will use it, like a VIP level, if you like, within the course that you can kind of upgrade to. And then maybe there's a monthly kind of evening session and building of the community around it so that others can then share experiences, etc. So it can be partly with me, but also then partly without me.
Okay. And how much would you charge for that?
I have no idea. How much should I charge for that?
Okay, good. Let's start with how much you think you would charge, and then we'll start to sort of figure out where the right sort of price point is. And I will also unpack it as well as we start to go through this, so people can understand sort of where my logic is going as we're sort of going through the coaching process. So if you had to charge for it, what would you charge?
Well, let's say, again, thinking of my audience, and I'm sure they're kind of waiting on this answer because they know that they are the audience, they are the target market. And not a lot of them have got a huge amount of money because a lot of them are going to be paying for this personally rather than through their business. Okay. So I would think probably at that one, we're looking at a subscription kind of model. So probably for like a 12-month subscription, and you're probably looking at maybe £25-30 a month, something like that, for that one extra little kind of upgrade sort of nudge there to it.
Okay, so £360 a year roughly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So pricing operates on what we call a bandwidth. So a lot of people assume pricing is binary. It's either too cheap or too expensive. It's yes, no, I'm in or I'm out. And one of the things which we've established is that, for one, that product sounds scalable. So the unit thing is kind of like you could sell 100 or 200 or maybe even 1,000 units of that, reasonably speaking. So it is scalable in that respect. But imagine, so we've got £300 as a starting point for that 12-month sort of program. But what if there was a future version of you who's actually kind of been through the gears, maybe had a conversation too with Robin about pricing and confidence around how to sell it and things like that? I don't know. And maybe in 3 years or 5 years time, you're selling this for, I don't know, £3,000.
Yeah, I think that would be a natural kind of progression. I think because this is such early days, really, and we're talking real cutting edge kind of stuff here. The appetite, I guess, is there from the marketplace, but the confidence level of committing to something which is so early in the game, I think
Hmm.
probably it won't be 3 years. I think maybe this is this time next year. That might be an
Okay. God, as
achievable
soon as that.
thing.
Okay. So what
Yeah.
we've established is bandwidth here. So we've got £300 up to £3,000. So that's what 2,700 numbers which we're operating in the middle there. And what I find is quite interesting that quite often we try and resolve like pricing, especially consultants, try and resolve pricing issues intellectually. Because it makes sense. Well, it's numbers based. We'll do some maths and we'll end up at this particular figure. But there's actually two sides to this story, which I'm about to demonstrate. Okay, well, just out of curiosity, so what value do you think people would get out of? So they do the course. What could they get from that? What would they then go on to do?
Well, based on the value that some of these assets have been created for other sort of modules, everybody who listens to this will know I do a lot of work with Cambridge Marketing College, and a lot of the professional qualifications that are now emerging through, the marketing industry. So they could either go down that route and then obviously get a qualification in this as a result of doing this as almost a foundation level, but they could also then take this back into their business and get huge amounts of value as they start to roll it out. But of course, because it's an emerging thing, it's not set in stone, because the whole industry is moving forward, because AI obviously is emerging itself. This will be a thing that will be infilled behind it. So they might have the base version now, but this time next week, there'll be more content in there. This time next month, it'll look different because it'll need to be upgraded and refreshed. So it's going to be a continual moving thing. But I think it's one hand practical, one hand probably part of your CV.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that something like this, if people are buying it, or when people are buying it, is that you're taking care of the innovators and the early adopters who get this. That they can. You can't predict exactly what's going to happen, but they can see the potential with this type of technology, right? So, and there's potential there, like you said, for them to leverage it either in their career or through a business. How much do you think? Just make a reasonable guess, reasonable assumption. How much money do you think somebody could earn in a career using AI or running a business using this technology?
Well, I think if we stick with the whole consulting thing, I think if you were looking to, move out of a paid sort of job, full-time kind of career type of job into consultancy, I mean, it's the kind of numbers that we're talking about. Easily, I think we're looking between 100 and 200,000 a year. As a starting point using AI, because of the automation, the efficiency, the scaling, you're going to provide so much value to a client, even if it was just one or two clients.
So we'll put £300 in and we'll get 100K back out. It's kind of what you're saying there. So 0.3%, that feels like way too cheap.
It's giving it away,
isn't it? Yeah,
isn't
absolutely.
it?
So I'm gonna go through and just say some numbers now, because you kind of just agreed with me that it's too cheap and maybe we could sell it for a bit more money. But imagine we're selling it as like that 12-month accelerator, for example, and not a subscription. I might come back to the subscription piece in a minute, but imagine it's a 12-month program. They're going to come away with all this valuable insights and technology and new education, okay, with the potential to turn it into 100K. So you start at £300 and try not to keep a poker face. I need you kind of just to relax into this and allow your body to do the talking, okay? So imagine this is like we're deciding that it's more than £300. We're going to sell it for more money, okay? And just relax. I'm going to say some numbers, okay? So £500, £800, £1,200, £1,500. Yeah, we're starting to get there already. So you were kind of like nodding.
Yeah, I was feeling it. There was a moment when you said 1,200. I don't know why. I was just feeling that number as you said it.
Just inside, did it feel like just comfortable, or was it just
something moved? There was the dial kind of just did a little flicker there. Yeah.
Okay, so between sort of 900 and 1,200. So
I think it was the 1,200 point. I think it was the 1,200 point. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. So what I normally do at this point is I would make a bet with you, Neil, and we have witnesses. This is recorded, and you have witnesses. Okay, so you don't have to take the bet, but it depends on how you like to play. But I would suggest that the first 10 people that you pitch this to, you should pitch it to them at 1,200. And what I will do is if you pitch 10 people at £1,200 and all of them say no, I will become your first client for this and I'll pay you £1,200 for it. So you can't lose. Okay. But there's a slight caveat to this. If you get to 5-0, so 5 pitches, 0 sales at 1,200, you need to call me and we'll book in just a sales training if you're up for it. And I'll show you how I would position it and handle those sales calls and talk to you about how I would, talk about the value proposition and things like that and articulate the value around this to clients when you're on those calls. Because I don't want you to lose. Obviously, it works within my favor if I give you a bit of extra help on those final 5 pitches. And I normally ask people as well, if you can kind of find a way to creatively document those conversations, that's helpful, whether they're recorded or there's a transcript or something like that. Because I also like to see how you're actually sort of going through the process of selling it. Is that a bet you'd be willing to take?
I think that seems a very, very fair and balanced equation. Yeah.
Excellent. So we've actually 4x'd your price. So we've gone from £300 to £1,200, like that. Okay. And what was going on there was when you tried to figure it out intellectually, you're a smart guy, Neil. Like I get it. And so we go straight to the intellectual side of things. We run the numbers and we think about what people might pay and things like that, forgetting about necessarily the value. Sales and pricing is all based on our internal value system. It's all based on emotions and our subconscious. So your conscious said 300, your subconscious said, shut up, Neil, you're actually worth 1,200. And that's where that visceral sort of the bodily reaction, which I saw, where you started to nod. So when I'm going through I've done this exercise in front of with hundreds of people, and you typically get either like the facial expressions change. Sometimes you get physical expressions will change as well. So you started nodding. Sometimes people recoil. They get like a full on gut reaction to it. It's those sorts of things. So yours is a little bit more subtle. So just in case people are listening to the audio and they want to know what was going on there.
That was the moment. Yes. Yeah.
That's it. And then this is where, again, you be fearless with it. You're like, right, okay, so 10, that's all I've got to do. I'm not committing to this forever. I'm just going to commit to Robin for 10 pitches, £1,200, and we'll see where we end up. And I'll touch base with him and get a bit of help if we find that we're struggling with that. That's how you overcome the fear, is you shift from trying to predict and assume what might happen in the future when you put a product out, to actually just getting out there and trying it, knowing that it's not permanent. It can also be undone, because maybe we do 10, maybe I end up having to pay you 1,200, but you would feel more comfortable selling it, doing the next 10 pitches at £800 or £900. So we retreat a little bit into more of a comfort zone, do 10 pitches, and then we reassess and we just gather evidence as we're going.
What an interesting exercise. And I'm sure everybody was doing the maths as we were talking about this, Robin, and actually sort of thinking, what would I do in my situation? This is really interesting. I guess then it kind of opens up that question, and you touched on it about sort of 10 minutes or so ago, which is about this whole thing about micro niching, I think was the phrase that you talked about. And it's kind of, for me, it's, certainly starting out, I think most people think, oh yeah, well, I've got a network, I've got that, let's call it tier 1 connections. So I've got this kind of, and again, as we all know, it's finite. There's that number of people you can reach out to initially, particularly when you're starting out. What is it about kind of the tier 2, which is obviously their connection? So you're looking for that introduction through friend of a friend, because somebody told me then it's all about tier 3. Once you can get to tier 3, which is people you don't have any connection with right now at all, that's when you've got a proper consultancy or a proper business. Are they right?
Kind loosely, yes. I think there's some truth in that. So where I was talking about that micro niching was where you'd, again, intellectually tried to solve this problem around, how do I charge for this? And I'm going to do a £25 a month subscription for it. And again, this is an assumption which I'm making, so please correct me if I'm wrong. Part of you was thinking, well, how can I make this available to the broadest number of people? Now, that's kind of, again, it makes sense. It makes sense from a logic perspective, but then when you actually look at what the purpose of business really is, the purpose of business is not to enroll as many clients as you possibly can do. It's to build a sustainable, profitable business, i.e. the purpose of business is to make money, it's to make profit, and ideally keep some of that cash behind. And quite often, so imagine if you'd started selling it for 25 a month and maybe your warmest audience came through out of that, maybe you got 100 people signed up to it. what I tend to see is, and you see this in not just consulting, but SaaS businesses and low ticket memberships the world over as well, where they reach this natural plateau where it then becomes a revolving door of people coming in and out. So you might get 100 clients in, but then like the same number you get in each month, then the same number are churning and leaving. The other challenge with like selling a low ticket subscription is that, especially at £25 a month, is you've introduced 12 points of failure throughout the year for people to potentially cancel. Things are going great. They think they understand it. They don't need it anymore. So they'll cancel. Things aren't going so great. Money's got a bit tight. So they'll cancel. So it's like, you can't win. So it's much better actually when you're building out consulting packages, when you're building even coaching, freelance work or things like that, especially with memberships, is try not to do monthlies with people unless it's packaged up for a start and you're giving people an installment plan, but the price they pay is fixed. It's just you've got, flexible terms. Or if you're going to do some kind of a subscription or membership, switch to quarterly or annual billing. So there's fewer points of failure. And also, if somebody stays in there for 12 months, they've got a far better chance of success, especially with a bit of extra time with Neil on those calls, asking questions and helping with the facilitation and implementation. The other thing I see as well, coming directly back to your question, is your closest network, if you haven't launched this product out to them at the moment, they're hungry, they're warm. You could put a block of cheese in front of them and probably sell it for £1,200, right? Because they just trust you and they're just waiting for you to put a product in front of them. And so I see so many consultants or business owners where they launch into the marketplace at vastly discounted rates. It's like complete disparity. Your warmest people would literally buy anything for a reasonable sum of money, not totally crazy amount of money, but if we get the balance right with it. From there, now you've got extra bandwidth. So I have this concept around the sales cycle of doom. So when you sell something for too cheap, you sell, deliver, sell, deliver, sell, deliver, sell, deliver. Constantly, it's like frenetic, loads of energy. We're doing loads of marketing, constantly like trying to enroll people, sell, deliver, sell, deliver. And then we like get ill or have a holiday or something. Deep breath. And then we go back into the cycle again. So sell, cycle of doom, sell, deliver. But actually, if you charge more money for it, it's like your universe expands out that gravitational, you get out the gravitational field and you charge some more money. So now you've got more time to deliver a better quality product or service to your clients, which produces better quality results. Which generally means that they're willing to stick around, which makes more money on the back end of that, and then also makes you far more referable. So having far fewer clients but making significantly more money is actually a far better business model, generally speaking, because not just because of what you can do for the existing clients, but it does make you far more referable on the back end. Even to a point, and this is I don't know if this is going to be the best illustration of it, but it's something which I found works for me, for example. So traditional way of coaching is, right, we'll do a 3 or 6 month accelerator, you're in and you're out. And you create this constant revolving door of like clients coming through a practice. And consultants kind of, when they're selling day rates and things like that, they reach a certain point where clients typically tend to churn and they leave, and then you've got to replace them. So I did something slightly different. We introduced this lifetime access to all of our resources. So we do weekly calls, we do turbo calls, we do all sorts of stuff with our clients, but they pay a fixed fee. We do have installment plans, but then it's lifetime access. Now what we've got is we can't get rid of clients because it's lifetime access. There's no reason for them to leave unless we do something to like piss them off. But that doesn't happen, right? Because our whole ethos is around community. We want people to come in, and it's no longer about fearless business. It's no longer really about Robin Waite. It's actually now about the members that we've got in our community, and they all build relationships. They're all helping to, one another, in terms of like referring work to one another and collaborating on projects and things like that. And you create this sort of mastermind effect where all of a sudden the community is bigger than the brand the program they joined in the first place. I think there's a lot to be learned from that around how you kind of create remarkable value, customer lifetime value, to keep people sort of within something. But yeah, referrals are great because it skips the steps around having to do loads of content marketing and hold loads of difficult consultations and things like that. Generally, referrals, so those tier 3 people who kind of come in now, they're pre-warmed because it's come through like a trail of like good results followed by a warm referral, and you don't generally need to work too hard to get those sorts of clients over the line because they're pre-sold by the message they've been fed previously.
Mm. How much for you then, Robin, is kind of ongoing education a thing as a consultant? Obviously, you've got some incredible, there really are incredible kind of models and ways of thinking that you're sharing with us here. And I really thank you. I need to go back through this recording and really properly listen to this properly, sort of a number of times, I think, as I'm sure many people will. But it's one of those things that it kind of, you never sort of satisfy yourself, do you, when you're kind of doing this? Because once you have this conversation, maybe on a podcast or with a client, it opens up a few more questions, and then you have to then almost sort of search for those answers, don't you? So you're constantly, as a consultant, if you're doing this properly, you're constantly learning, aren't you? How do you do that?
Yeah, well, I made a massive mistake actually. Post university, I thought, right, that's it, I'm done. Never need to pick up another book again. And I didn't read anything for quite a long period of time, probably 6 or 7 years actually post uni. Bearing in mind that was the start of my initial business, which was a marketing agency. And then I picked up a book. It was called Built to Sell by a guy called John Warrilow. And at the same time, there was another book called Eric Ries, The Lean Startup, and I discovered audiobooks. So up until then, it was really just about, physical books. And I struggled to concentrate on reading physical books for a long period of time. But if I'm out in the car or walking the dog or something, plug into an audiobook and I'm like well away. So I got introduced to sort of personal and self-development, especially about entrepreneurship through listening to audiobooks. And I think my library now, is about 300 audiobooks deep since then. So over the last, 12, 13, 14 years or however long it's been now. And so my thing is about, I do see myself as a lifelong learner. I get along to conferences when I can. I love listening to podcasts, audiobooks, and jumping onto, conferences that are appropriate as, in terms of my subject matter when they crop up. One of the biggest mistakes I see people making though is that a lot of consultants, especially more so in sort of the coaching and therapy space, this is probably more common, but people where they're struggling to grow their practice, they can't seem to attract the clients they want to attract, but they see that as a direct reflection on them. And so they're like, oh, well, it must be because I don't have an NLP certificate. So they'll go and get a certificate, come back and start trying to get clients again. And then they'll struggle. And then they'll be like, oh, well, it must be because I haven't got an MBIT certificate. So they'll go off and do their MBIT qualification and come back. But they're still having these same challenges around marketing and sales. And in part of that is because their prices are too low. So they have to market and sell so much that it gets very overwhelming. So I think once you reach a certain level of certified expertise, and I actually even think that graduate level university is that's one of the best qualifications. You probably one of the only qualifications really that you need, unless you're operating on somebody's brain or doing something very, mind, body, spirit, like health related, but follow your passions. Like me personally, I've discovered that I absolutely love entrepreneurship, and there are certain people I follow that I just get what they're about in terms of their message, their values, their mission, and things like that. So I just get on board with them now, and I consume all of their content mostly through audio. I'm able to take some of that message and take it back to clients and share like frameworks and models that I've learned through them. And that's enough. I'm going to admit it, and I'm not ashamed to admit it at all. I don't have a coaching certificate to say I can do what I do. But what I do have is 20 years worth of experience, all of this knowledge which I've accumulated, plus all the clients I've had the privilege of working with over that time, to be able to go, I know I can get results. And that speaks volumes more than anything else in my eyes. Like I said, the only caveat to that is if you do something which is technical around mind, body, spirit, health, things like that, I think it is important to have a certificate which says you can actually operate. One thing, and I'll wrap up my little sort of rant about this as well. It annoys me that a lot of certifying bodies out there don't take responsibility to help clients help their clients to get clients. So I see a lot of therapy and coaching related certifications, which are great, you got your qualification now to coach. They don't have a business or marketing module built into there. And I think that's really reckless. I think it's really irresponsible, because you've got all these amazing coaches and consultants and experts who just go out into the marketplace and just don't know how to get clients, and it ruins people. And it's such a sad state of affairs, really. So I think there's an ethical side to it. I think there's also just a practical side. If you are good at what you do and you can build up the case studies, the testimonials, the reviews to speak as much, and you're starting to get referrals, that's all the evidence you need. Then you can start to sort of grow your business from that point.
What an exciting opportunity for pretty much everybody who's been listening or watching this. You can just really follow Robin almost in Robin's footsteps in terms of a way of thinking. And I think it is mindset. I mean, what I'm picking up here is that confident, fearless kind of attitude, but also there's some really pragmatic kind of science almost behind this. And yes, that little tester, our little bet, I think is, it's going to live long in my mind, that one, in terms of how to kind of position this. Robin, if people want to connect with you, and I'm sure many, many people will, we need to be sending them across to fearless.biz/TYS, don't we? Is that the right place?
That's it, yeah, fearless.biz/TYS. So I've got some signed copies of Take Your Shot, which needs some homes. So if anybody would like to know I think we've covered several of the principles actually, which are covered in the book. So it should give you a bit more grounding in terms of what we've been through today on the podcast. And then also, a personal favor as well, I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel, and I'm doing sort of regular weekly just sound bites as well around similar sorts of topics. So I could do with 1 or 2 extra subscribers if anybody happens to be hanging out on YouTube and wants to see some hopefully interesting content around pricing and productizing and sales and things like that.
I'm sure they will, Robin. I mean, it's just been so good. It's so practical. I love the fact that we're not just talking in theory, we're actually talking practicality here. So everybody, don't be afraid, be fearless, I think is what Robin's saying. Yeah. Robin, thank you so much for your time today.
That's my pleasure. Thanks, Neil.